What's something you see many people do that you'll never do? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Story 1. Not using the turn signals on their car. I don't understand why it's so hard for people to just use their signals to avoid a potential car accident behind them. I get sometimes people forget, but I feel a lot people just don't care to alert other drivers. Story 2. I see a lot of folks say smoking. It's so good to see that. I smoked for 14 years and I've quit for 15 years now. It was one of the hardest things to do ever. It wasn't just the addiction to nicotine, but also the social aspect and availability. Story 3. I recently got a car living in Chicago. The amount of people who will park their car in a lane, throw in their hazards, and run into a place is astounding and makes me seethe. These people have or maybe lack something that is wholly different than me. Story 4. Leave trash on a hiking trail in nature. Sometimes I'll go through a long hike, and when I finally reach the end, there's like protein bar wrappers on the ground and it pisses me off. Just put it in your pocket. Story 5, reading this is utterly depressing. So many people committed to never trying things. That's half the point of being alive. It's okay to try to gamble in a casino one time. You can have a drink and not become an alcoholic. Are dangerous, but they can also be a lot of fun. This hard, no never. Approach is how people end up with the mentality that they've fallen off the wagon if they try the thing and end up going way too far. It's a weird sort of neo-puritanical vibe that's becoming more and more common. I mean, sure, maybe don't give heroin or meth a quick try, but nobody's handing out medals at the end of your life for not smoking one cigar or going clubbing occasionally. Story 6, spit in public around a bunch of people. For some reason, I see this all the time, and it's 100% always men. I think it's so rude and disgusting because their spittle mist could fly in anyone's direction. I've never seen a woman do it, so you can't tell me it's a bodily necessity. Story 7. Let dogs lick them in the mouths. It's gross. I can understand the cheek, but to actively let them lick you on the lips and in your mouth is disgusting. Please don't use the argument that dogs have cleaner mouths than we do. I understand that, but it's a no for me. I love dogs, just not that intimately. Story 8. Taking your bad day out on people that don't deserve it. Yes, it's normal to have a bad day and be in a shit mood, but just because I'm pissed off, I'm not going to go curse out a random fast food waiter or curse out a subordinate at work that had nothing to do with my bad mood. Story 9. Running up debt by going on vacation, then running up more debt by taking another vacation before paying off the debt from their previous one. Also, getting a $10,000 raise at work and then going and buying a car worth $30-50K more than the one they already have. People make a lot of financial decisions that I would definitely never do. Story 10. Be rude for absolutely no reason. It's not hard to be a decent person. It's not hard to see something I don't like and just ignore it and move on. What other people do with their life has no relevance to mine. Why would I go out of my way to target them and be rude? It costs nothing to be kind or shut your mouth. I get freedom of speech is a thing, but does it really make others feel good to tear someone else down? Story 11, gamble. It's absolutely wild to me when I see people gambling on their phone like with their real dollars. And I'm not saying it's because I have better self-control. For whatever reason, the flashing lights of the slot machine or the anticipation of the card turns in blackjack do almost nothing for me. It's not addictive. It's just boring to me. I even tried something gambling adjacent, Balatro, thinking that would get my dopamine center to light up like a Christmas tree, and nothing. It was fine, but after about an hour in the first session, I never picked it up again. Story 12. Mock people who lost their jobs, go paranoid because a Mexican family moved in next door, not stop for pedestrians to cross, leave carts in parking spaces, forget that unity with concern for others will help us all. Story 13. Laugh at or stare at people who look out of the norm in their eyes in public. I left my old friends because they always pointed and snickered at anyone who was overweight, had dyed hair, wore bright clothing, anyone in a wheelchair, anyone who was visibly disabled or had any sort of visible genetic condition. It was mentally exhausting how they were physically unable to just not judge everyone around them. It was never funny to me. Story 14. I might be tripping, but answering someone who greets you out of formality. I've had a fair hand of good morning. Just be met by utter silence, not even acknowledging my existence. Some people are just weird LLA. Story 15. Smoking, littering, rude to waiters and CSR, rude to parents, not giving people right of way, intentionally loud music, phone on loudspeaker in public, not cleaning the house or place of living, getting drunk on becoming burden on everyone else, throwing things when angry, unkind to anyone or any being. Story 16. Be incapable of just minding their own business, unless it's your best friend who's so you know very well. and you personally saw their SO out with another person behind their back, and you know it's behind their back because they lied to your best friend about it, no, you don't need to tell anyone anything. Again, anyone less than your best friend, you don't actually know these people. You don't know their relationship behind closed doors, but you've now inserted yourself into it. I'm sorry, the amount of should I tell my coworkers so I suspect they're cheating? Should I tell my cousin who I see a few times a year that if she doesn't tell her husband, I will? Advice questions asked. Like, that's so entitled, dude. Just mind your own business and let them attend to theirs with the privacy they deserve. You are not entitled to be part of any of this. No one expects you to get involved, nor do they want you to. How on earth do you care beyond being vaguely aware of a stranger's relationship that only their closest loved ones might know about? Now, when it is your best friend, that's just the worst. I completely understand the moral dilemma between not wanting to hurt them, but knowing the holy hell it'd cause if they found out you knew and let them continue in the relationship. Even confronting the SO feels like shit, BC. You don't want to be the one who went behind your BF's back to do it. Story 17. I've got a friend that has a $900 rent, including utilities, earns about $105K in a low cost of living area. They live paycheck to paycheck. They impulse buy anything and everything from TikTok app, sketchy workout supplements, hormones, massages, eating out every day off, Starbucks every day, driving all over. Their dog needed to be put down, and they didn't have $150 to cover the cost and had to put it on that vet care credit thing. They see nothing wrong with the way they live and will not change it no matter what. I'm baffled by how someone can blow $6,000 a month. Story 18. Cheat. Doesn't matter the circumstance whether you're in a relationship or making someone believe they're the only one you're talking to. Just the whole idea of messing around with people's emotions, thoughts, and controlling their idea of reality is so incredibly icky to me. Story 19. People that treat their pets like shit. Neglect abuse. Why get a pet if you're not going to be there for them? What is the point if you just throw your dog in the backyard and never interact with them? Story 20. Try to be funny or make themselves seem better, cooler by insulting someone else's appearance or mannerisms and generally putting other people down. It's so incredibly easy to just not be a dick to people, yet so many people cannot manage it. Story 21. Having food uncovered in open air like at parties. I get grossed out by the idea that someone can sneeze and get their particles on the food. I am a chronic overthinker. That's why when we host anything, we cover all food that's out, or in our house we don't leave anything open air. Everything's covered. Story 22. Walking my dog off leash anywhere near a road. No matter how well trained your dog is, accidents happen. A simple fright can send your dog straight onto the road in front of a car. Absolutely never doing this. I tend not to let my dog off leash anywhere unless it's specifically allowed, etc. But still, this is an extra never. Also adding retractable leads, I will never use them. Dodgy as hell. Story 23. Ride a motorcycle. As a younger kid, me and my family were coming home from visiting my grandparents and came upon a gruesome motorcycle accident that had just occurred where the motorcyclist was decapitated. I know that is extremely rare, but that is an image that is just as fresh all these years later. I theoretically think motorcycles would be fun, but I'm just certain I will end up maimed or dead, so no thank you. Story 24. It really bothers me when people hit an animal and just keep driving. It feels incredibly cruel and, in my opinion, says a lot about a person's character. I do understand that there are situations where stopping isn't an option, if it would put you or others in danger, or if you're in an emergency and truly don't have the time. But if you're in a safe position to pull over and say you're just heading home, going to a friend's or out to eat, etc., and you choose to keep going without a second thought, that really doesn't sit right with me. I'll never forget when my partner hit a cat on a back road. It ran out of the tall grass so suddenly that there was no time to react. We immediately stopped, and I held the poor thing as it passed. I was in tears. As this was happening, another car slowly drove by and the driver was actually smiling at me, like grinning ear to ear, and not the normal polite smile, but like he was giggling that I was comforting the poor thing. IDK, that moment especially felt like a completely different kind of evil. Story 25. Dine and dash. Ugh. Tried it once when I had absolutely no money and was so hungry while traveling home after having surgery. Cried my eyes out. Left the waiter a note saying how sorry I was. Had to walk out before my partner and let him walk out alone. Never again. It bothered me so bad. Story 26. Get a tattoo. Don't get me wrong, I think tattoos really suit some people, and I admire the bravery it takes to get one, as well as the skill that a tattoo artist needs. But I personally really feel uncomfortable at the thought of getting needles stuck into my skin to brand me with something that I can't change my mind on without great expense, pain, and scarring. I just know I'd start hyperventilating in a week when stuck with it and then bored or realizing I don't like it. Story 27. Tell someone I am going to be there and then not show up for them in their time of need. Over the years, life has given me the opportunity to show up, and now I can and will because I finally got my own addictions in check and chose something better, sobriety, and following up with my truth and giving what and when I can. Story 28. Use weight loss injections. Most of my family uses Ozempic or one of the others, and none of them eat healthy or exercise at all. The medical waste that will be here hundreds, thousands of years after they're gone, along with the potentially long-term side effects, blows me away. I can't do it. Story 29. Not inspect their food before they eat it. The amount of shit I have found in food that isn't supposed to be there is crazy. Undercooked chicken, green scrubbies chopped up, bugs, a fingernail. The list does go on. I will say most of these places were big chains. Blows my mind the amount of people who blindly just eat stuff. Story 30. Nitrous oxide. I don't care that it's rainbow candy flavored. Literally, the reason it gets you high is because it's killing your brain cells. I know people exaggerate about a lot of killing brain cells, but with NOS, it is very literal. Repeated oxygen deprivation leads to serious consequences and cognitive impairment beyond the scope of the high. Story 31. Leave bodily fluids/substances on bathroom surfaces. Leave my shopping cart in the middle of the lot. Put others at risk while driving just to get through an intersection. Treat other people with a lack of empathy and respect. Story 32. Get a tattoo. I don't mind them on other people, and it would be cool to get one myself, but I have a very low pain threshold, and I know I would flip out at the first touch of the needle and wouldn't be able to take it. Also, I don't think I have a strong enough attachment to any person, place, thing, or idea that I would want permanently on me. Story 33. Honestly, lash out to someone, verbally and physically. I cannot think of one situation where my reaction to something went out of my control. It is totally unproductive and does not solve any situation when someone becomes hot-headed. It always bedazzles me that people do that. Story 34. Recording people in public. I watch travel videos or walking tours on YouTube sometimes, and you can really see how people's demeanor changes, usually becomes wary, the moment they spot a phone held up like you're taking a video picture. I'm not even going to talk about the mistake that is TikTok. I just feel that secondhand uncomfortableness, man. Story 35. Let their kids leave a mess behind in a restaurant. Not on the table, not on the floor, not a chance. Every restaurant we go to as a family, and I mean everywhere from McDonald's and Applebee's to much, much nicer places. Once the check is paid and before coats and hats, it's time to clean up, guys. Trash on plates and bowls stacked. We pick up any dropped food under the table, and Dad, find a broom and pan to get the bits they missed. A restaurant is an extension of our home, and the wait staff have better things to do. No one should ever dread seeing my family coming to eat. There's a lot of us, but you'd never know it by how we leave things. So clean up after your damn brood. If you're not willing to get on the ground and pick up every damn French fry, you best be leaving Junior to eat in the car. Story 36. Mortgages, especially 30-year mortgages. It disturbs me to think of paying for a house for that long and end up repaying 2 or 3 times the cost of the loan. Or renting from some awful landlord, or even worse, a ghoulish renting corporation like Blackstone. Story 37. Road rage. Wait for a parking spot when there is one a few spaces away. Litter, use LAL, not use my blinker. Gossip. Gossip is my biggest one. I've seen how it destroys lives, and I've always made a point to never speak badly about someone being their back. Story 38. Vape. I'm just not big into smoking in general, but vaping is absolutely huge in my generation. I'm a late-age millennial. My gen is also pretty big on smoking grass, which I'm also not into. It's less the effect of it and more the discomfort that comes with it. Story 39. In heavy traffic, merging 2,000 feet before the end of the lane instead of zippering as state law requires. Oftentimes, 3 lanes of the highway will be nearly stopped, so I just ride to the end of the lane and it's flowing again. Literally creating a jam for no reason, just leaving a zillion car links empty. Also standing up and/or trying to get your stuff from the overhead bin on a plane when many rows in front are still seated. No bad human. Story 40. Park in one of the pickup area spaces at Target or Best Buy or something and just go in, leaving it there and blocking that space for 30 minutes just because they didn't want to have to park further down. Gets me heated. That's a whole slot that customers can't fill now. Story 41. Shake hands with a completely unnecessary amount of force exerted in the grip. I assume they feel the need to demonstrate their dominance and alpha qualities. Whereas I see it as an anathema to what a handshake should be, a sign of respect. It's particularly telling when it's done by someone who pretends to be your friend. Story 42. I mentioned this in a sub-comment below, but changing lanes in front of folk without signaling especially speeding and doing it 2 or 3 lanes in a row. It's almost always a pickup or a nicer car, and I know I'll probably get flack for making everything political. But I'm convinced they're mostly conservatives, especially where I live. A lack of empathy for others, brazen disregard for anyone's well-being except their own, and when they wreck, it's finger-pointing. I say this from experience, and I'm obviously not broad-brushing all people who vote conservative do this, but it very much speaks to the mentality of voting strictly in your own interests. Story 43, wearing my night clothes in public. Maybe it's just the way I was raised, but I get appalled, absolutely repulsed when I see people out in public wearing their chintzy fleece pajama pants to the store. My clothes might be a bit ratty and/or oil-stained, but at least they're actual clothes and not droopy fleece pants with no belt loops that make me witness everything when you bend over to pick up that toy your bratty kid just whipped against the floor. Story 44. Yell at my mom. I don't get why my friends yell at their parents. It only turns out negative results, and it's much easier to just discuss unless they're being unreasonable, which is when you drop the conversation and leave. Story 45, double park intentionally, like right over the center line. So obnoxious, real, I'm the main character vibes. I already feel bad if I park too close to a car or the line, or someone else did a parking job and then left. 99% of the time I check, and will realign if it's too trash. Story 46, hook up with a coworker. I used to work in sales, which was full of coworker on coworker, which was wild to me. Moved into healthcare, and there's been some wild things that came out at work. I've also been propositioned multiple times. People do stupid career-ending things there's literally apps for this. Story 47, yell angrily at their partner. If you don't have the love in your heart to discuss a mistake calmly, or have a productive conversation over a disagreement, or conscientiously accept that your partner is human and makes mistakes, then you don't have enough love to be a partner right now. Story 48. This is kind of niche, but when there's no oncoming traffic on the left but some on the right, drivers will turn left into the suicide lane and put on their right blinker instead of just waiting for both ways to be clear. Half the time I see it, they don't even gain any time. It's illegal and I never do it. I've even seen people do it when they don't need to. I'm in Utah, BTW. Story 49, smoking. Cigarettes, vapes, whatever, it's all absolutely foul, terrible for your health, and just all around trashy. If you smoke, you smell like shit. Everyone who isn't a smoker despises your stink. We can smell you across the room. Combine that with assholes throwing their butts wherever they feel like it, and smokers are just trashy people. Story 50. Tell people in your friends group they're a 1 or 2 out of 10. Chances are they already know. You just peed in their Cheerios for nothing. Pretty people don't usually stay as attractive they wish. Us ugly people are the most faithful friends, lovers, and spouses because we can go elsewhere. We just choose not to. Story 51, gambling, especially if they don't have much money. In my mind, I get the idea of wanting to get a big win and be able to treat yourself. But on the flip side, the odds are that you're probably giving your money away and getting nothing for it. Story 52, cheating on their spouse. I get it. Sometimes your marriage isn't working. Either fix it or get out. Note, I got out. She did cheat, but that wasn't why I left. It did make me realize the very good reasons to leave. My new wife is spectacular. Story 53. Live without fear of facing violence for who I am. I'm a trans girl and don't always pass. I have to choose where I go carefully. When I do pass, I never speak because I know my voice will out me. I just wanted to be happy in my own skin. Story 54. Settle for a life of working 40-hour weeks just to barely have money left after paying bills and necessities. Life isn't meant to be spent working all the time with little time left over for things you actually enjoy doing. Story 55. Leave their car unlocked or running because they're just running inside and will be quick. I don't get it. Whatever meager benefit you're getting doesn't measure up to the consequences of having your car stolen. Story 56. 2 things. Playing a tambourine of death to evoke the spirits of yesterday. It's said to be really useful if you need help with chores. I don't do it, of course, because I lost my tambourine in an electricity-related accident or misdemeanor. Drinking alcohol. Story 57. Permanent makeup, especially eyebrows. I've seen so many eyebrows that were once microbladed brown that now have a purple tone to it, or black ones that now look bluish. I've seen many that have faded and blurred with time into one thick eyebrow line rather than all the small hairs they once were. Story 58. Cheat on their spouses. Some people do it on the sly, others a bit more open. I got one guy at work who brags about it. It's insane to me that short-term sexual gratification is more compelling to some folks than the stable life that they have spent your life building. Sure, there are plenty of attractive people out there, but is really that important to some people? Story 59. Put my dog's business in a poop bag and leave it beside the walk, on the trail, in the woods, etc. What's up with that lately? If they aren't going to take care of it, maybe they should leave it au naturel. More potential disease but less plastic waste in the woods. Not sure what is worse. Story 60. Trolling. Like serious internet trolling. I had a memorial page for my wife who died 11 years ago, and people started filling it with comments like, "You're whore of a wife, go Brandon," without knowing who they were, just to get a rise, you know? Story 61. When people go grocery shopping, I notice many people put their veggies in different plastic bags despite they just buy one each. For example, they buy 1 carrot, 1 potato, 1 onion. They place each veggie in each separate roll bag and go to the cashier and again take another plastic bag. Story 62. Women who are in a relationship blaming independent women being a problem because the woman's boyfriend disrespected her by not relaying, nor depending on her due to the boyfriend's independence to hang out with other independent women. Story 63. Take my shoes and socks off around the house. I understand why other people do it. It's more comfortable and their floors are clean. But my floor, oh God, it's dirty. All the time. My cats make it that way. So I made the decision to try to keep my shoes on almost all the time. It sounds weird, but trust me, it would be the grossest thing to walk barefoot in my house. Story 64. Cheat. It's not that hard not to. It's also not easy, BC. We all have urges. Understanding them, accepting them, communicating about them, and respecting your partner makes it pretty easy, though. Role-playing can be a good substitute sometimes, too, for those of us with super high drives. Just need the right partner compatibility-wise. Story 65. Jump on the trend bandwagon. Like, I don't have to have the latest Nike shoes. I don't need a Stanley Cup. I don't need the hip new clothing brand. I don't need to have or do what everyone else has or does. Every single trend is overhyped, and people mostly stop caring about things a month later. Story 66. Commit a relatively minor crime, shoplifting, jaywalking, parking illegally, without being paranoid about the consequences. I had a coworker who drove to work every day in the carpool lane alone. He bragged about it. After a year, he got a ticket. He was really mad. Someone else pointed out, "Hey, $300 for a whole year isn't that bad," and that cheered him up. He had no sense of shame about breaking the rules. Story 67. Leave stains in the toilet. If you leave half of it after flushing, throw in some tactical paper or flush again. The objective after you finish is to get your crap gone, not to just press flush. I also almost never leave stains. Some people, their diet just sucks so much that everything stays behind. Story 68. Maybe it's because, as a European, I have a totally different point of view, but I never understood big tips in the US that are basically mandatory. If I want to tip and have enough money to do so, I will, especially if I like the customer service, but it kind of feels weird to be expected to do it right away. Edit deleting repeated word. Story 69. I will never do. Thinking that human are superior and most powerful creature in universe, as well as those who think a group of people for their race or color are smarter and privileged than others. Also thinking that we are far more developed than old eras. Truth is this totally wrong. We are just co-living on this earth with rest of all creatures. Past civilizations had other form of technology and knowledge that we didn't acquire yet. Different people is to complete each other, not to class each other on selected beliefs, nature, or aspects. Story 70. Yell harshly at their kids or pets for no reason. I'm not talking about get your claws off the screen, ma'am, me to my cat, LOL, or stop, get over here, if a dog or child runs off. I'm talking about the multiple trashy AF moms at our old apartment complex. Literally trashy too. BC, they'd litter when they thought nobody was watching, as well as both over control and neglect their children. These two things in particular were difficult to deal with in my own childhood, and it creates a weird flavor of trauma elmau. I felt a bit protective at times, despite being overall a shy, quiet, but kind neighbor, with my husband and cat just taking walks in the courtyard. Over control and neglect popped up in different ways at the complex, but there was one lady who just seemed hate-filled constantly. I didn't want to hear everything happening in her home, but she screamed and controlled loudly. Over-control in the home, like, "Stop playing so loudly, I'm on the phone. God, these kids are so annoying," to her two 10, 14-ish-year-old kids. Then they quietly play for a few minutes, and I hear, "And what the do you two think you're over here whispering about now, huh? Keeping secrets from me?" I was about to call the police on that bitch. She was tripping bad, until the person over the phone helped her and she calmed TF down. After my husband was like, "Was that the neighbor?" I was like, "Yeah, how crazy it is that people scream and swear for no reason at their children. It's like they can't do anything right for her, huh? Mao IDFC, fight me." She also let these kids run around for hours alone outside, so IDFK why she was so over-controlling of them in the home. I was triggered a lot by this lady in particular, LOL. I knew CPS was already visiting her semi-weekly. We heard her complain about it constantly, and later that one day she walked her kids out to the car while I was out walking my cat on her leash in the courtyard. I saw the two kids walking ahead first, and she was following behind, still griping over the phone about her ex, and told the kids to hurry thee up. I almost tripped on you, girl. God, I need to go get a drink already, before she was visible to me. I looked at just her like before she looked like literally turned her head and started talking quieter over the phone and didn't yell at her kids again before they reached the car. Oh my WTF. I don't around with child safety, though. Don't abuse your kids. Story 71. Stay in a toxic relationship. I don't insult or degrade my partner, and I don't accept being treated that way. If you don't have mutual respect in your relationship, then you're in for a world of hurt. And trust me when I say that your willingness to put up with somebody who treats you like crap is a sign for them to keep doing it. You'll get a million promises that it won't happen again, and they break every one of them. Story 72. Pay for services like parking and food delivery. I'll walk a mile if it means I get to save money on ridiculous parking fees. Paying for services and delivery fee plus tipping makes an order like $15.25 more than if I would go pick it up. Story 73. Drink, smoke. Look, you know that shit fucks you up, and they're additive substances. Once you start, it's pretty difficult to stop. Why on earth would I want to set myself up for a lifetime of addictive cycle? Like, okay, think about this. How many people end up in the ER because they were drunk and decided to do something stupid? How many accidents have occurred because someone thought that they were capable of driving after a few drinks? How many DV cases have an abusive drunk person? How many kids grow up without parental figures because their parents couldn't sober up? And not to mention the plethora of malignancies alcohol and smoking bring with them. Story 74. Gossip at work. I've seen many people be passed over for promotions because they don't know how to keep their mouths shut. Do your jobs and STFU. Nobody at work is your friend. They won't hesitate for a second to cut your throat for that promotion or raise. And if someone gossips to you, they gossip about you. Story 75. Something that's always perplexed me, and I know I'm an outlier here, is people buying bin liners for their indoor bins like in the kitchen. I think it's probably a preference for people who do, that was formed when shopping bags were free, then capitalized on by companies selling bin lines when bags were no longer free. The way I see it, you're buying something that's sole purpose is to be put in the bin. You're paying money for rubbish. You're literally buying trash. Just empty your bin directly into the larger bin outside and use one bag a week for that bin if you're in an area with the round bins instead of wheelie bins. If you say, what about wet waste? If you're cooking and have, for example, chicken scraps left over, use the plastic packaging from one of your ingredients to wrap the wet, smelly waste before binning it. And once a week or so, you should really be doing this anyway, wash your indoor bins. Story 76. Spend insane amounts of your money on shoes because of the brand. Maybe if it's good quality and would last me ages, maybe. But I bought cheap shoes that have lasted me for a long, long time, so I'd still rather the cheaper option. Story 77. Go on a cruise. No, sir, absolutely not. I had to travel on the ferry from France to UK once. It took less than 2 hours, and the whole time all I could think was, what if we sink? I can't swim. What if there are sharks? There is no way I could be able to relax being in the middle of the ocean for days on end. Story 78. Having a tattoo on their body. I think of it like being cattle on a ranch. People have turned something that was about individuality and made it a trend, a fashion statement. Some people have stuff on their bodies they don't even know what it means. They just thought it looked pretty and cool. Story 79. Smoke nicotine. My sister gets a coughing fit every time she laughs, but she acts like she just doesn't know why. She has to carry one of those stupid little digital vape things everywhere she goes, and she has fully said that she likes it because she just wants to be happy. She gave up on therapy and antidepressants so she could afford those things. I guess that you can actually turn the nicotine up so much that you get a literal nicotine high, so now she's completely hooked on that. On some level, her addiction issues aren't my choice or business. On the other hand, she's my sister, so of course I'm going to worry about her health. Story 80. Downhill ski. I hate the snow. I hate the fact that anyone would subject themselves going fast on it around trees. So many people I know have injured their knees and wrists. I already have a screwed up enough body. Absolutely never, even if someone paid me. Story 81. Stay in a relationship that's clearly dead, dying, or one-sided. I see too many people miserable because they stay in relationships where they're the only ones putting in effort. They're being disrespected, taken for granted, or the two of them are simply no longer compatible. I understand if you have a family with them or something, but the ones that do it just because they're afraid of being alone made me vow that I'd rather be alone than be with someone that brings me down. Story 82. Leave my doors unlocked while I'm home. Just can't do it. Have friends and family who leave doors unlocked with the thought that no one will break in if anyone's home, even at nighttime, which is absolutely insane to me. All my door locks are on unless I'm physically walking in or out and then relocked right behind me. Story 83, go into debt. I've never taken out a loan, don't have a credit card, rent my home, and everything I own is paid for in cash. I live within my means, and I have a fairly comfortable lifestyle. I just don't feel the need to have a car I can't afford or a phone I don't need. I prefer the simplicity of life without the specter of debt looming over my head. Story 84, investing in the stock market. Useless imaginary money stolen from working people isn't something you should aim and do if you have a decent morality. I don't give a she*T about your easy profit. You're a parasite at your own little scale. Story 85, buy property. I believe land ownership is straight up wrong. No one owns the earth. We are a delusional species to try. I end up doing work exchanges, which, but is what it is. I straight up refuse to pay to be alive, and honestly, if we all did, everything would change in a day. Story 86, promote themselves. In my perspective, a person who needs to tell you, or need to have someone else to tell you, how good, successful, fantastic, powerful, etc. it is a failure as a human. A person who want it to be known that it is better than anyone at all, I will focus on splitting apart, mentally, psychologically, and physically. Story 87. I live in Baltimore City, majority African-American city dwellers. The city is a dump, and most people here couldn't care less. They just throw their trash wherever. I call them on it, and then they physically threaten me. Ignorance is everywhere. Story 88. Settle for mediocrity. I see too many people living life at the bare minimum with no real ambition, no hunger to improve, and content with being average. I refuse to be one of them. I want excellence. I want to be the strongest, the smartest, and the richest in the room. Growth is the only option. Next theme. What's a family secret that was revealed by a family DNA history website? Story 1. Mine wasn't a secret exactly. Just a youthful one-night stand that had more consequences than my pops realized. My half-brother's mom didn't math correctly, so nobody knew. My new brother is cool as shit, though. It would have been cool if he'd been my big brother growing up, but better late than never. Story 2. I helped my child's grandfather obtain the first photo of his mother that he ever saw. He was adopted. The search was greatly aided by Ancestry DNA. That's how we were able to confirm the identity of his mother. Story 3. Grew up thinking I was Japanese and found out my mom was Korean. She was born in Japan. I have met aunts, uncles, and cousins from Japan. They all have Japanese names and 0% Japanese DNA. My grandma was born in 1935, and I don't know where she was born. Me and her were very close, and she didn't say if she knew she was Korean. We did always have kimchi in the house, though. Story 4. What about the hundreds of kids that found out they had the same father? Most born through IVF. The doctor was using his sperms instead of the bio dad's, destroying theirs. I might have some details wrong, but edit, adding this fact from Google. As of May 11th, 2022, Klein has been confirmed as the biological father of 94 doctor-conceived offspring. And it all came out when one woman submitting DNA to find a possible lost sister. Her DNA matched with numerous half-siblings, and research took over. At least the doctor is in prison. I think, 94 kids? Yikes. Story 5. I guess this isn't really a secret, but I have 0 relatives on my dad's side. I can trace back to the late 1800s in Hungary, then nothing. My assumption is that my direct ancestors immigrated and everyone else stayed and either didn't have children or were victims of the Holocaust. I wish I had answers one way or the other. Story 6. My maternal uncle was only a half-sibling to my mom and her twin. My aunt found out in their 70s. My mom was dying of cancer and their older brother had already passed away 10 years prior, so we never told my mom because it wouldn't have changed how my mom loved/thought about her brother, so we didn't see the point of it. Story 7. I don't know if it's exactly a family secret, but the cold case of missing 9-year-old Asha Degree. Almost exactly 25 years ago, she seems to have packed her backpack, left her house at 3:30 a.m., walked along the road where she was spotted by a couple of people, then disappeared. Very few clues were found, other than when a construction crew dug up her backpack about 1.5 years after her disappearance. The backpack was sealed in 2 garbage bags and buried over 35 miles away from her house. The case was recently reopened and a reinvestigation was started. Remember her backpack that was dug up over 23 years ago? They went back and tested the items inside, leading them to a familial DNA link to a completely random family in the area. They served a search warrant in September 2024 and just executed another search warrant last week. They found a car that resembles one that witnesses claimed Asha was pushed into during the reinvestigation. Authorities seem to think 2 sisters, who were 15 and 16 at the time, may have caused Asha's death, possibly accidentally, and their father helped them cover up. Text messages were uncovered in the search that are troubling at the very least. A case that was completely cold now seems to be red hot because a cousin uploaded their DNA to a public website, and one of the sisters supposedly drunkenly admitted to killing Asha at a party just a few years after it happened. Probably a little awkward at the reunion, but cheers to the hope of justice being served for Asha and her family. Story 8. My mom found out that her dad wasn't her bio dad, and it explained a lot. Funny that my grandmother was super religious, no cards allowed in her house, but when her non-bio dad worked for an older man, they lived just down the street from each other. My mom did a DNA test that popped up several half-siblings, and her older sister remembered that last name from when they were kids and living down the street from them, and that's how they made the connection. She reached out to her newfound half-siblings, and they confirmed their dad was her non-bio dad's boss, and the boss's son was her bio dad. The dark side is her non-bio dad always treated her so badly, yelled at her at 1 a.m. for not doing dishes when her siblings didn't have to do dishes at all or get yelled at. When she was 15, he kicked her until she was under the kitchen table and later peed blood. She married my dad shortly after turning 16 to get away from it, and they were married for 25 years, having me and my 4 siblings, and, despite the trauma and stunted emotional maturity, cared for and loved us deeply, even if they weren't perfect. By the time she found out her bio dad had passed, her non-bio dad, whom she knew as dad, had passed, and her mom, my grandmother, had dementia and was in no state to talk about any of this. But it makes me angry that my grandmother never stuck up for my mom, that she didn't protect her from my non-bio grandfather. It's obvious to us now that my mom, the youngest, wasn't supposed to be, and they knew the whole time. It definitely fundamentally alters how I think about my grandfather and grandmother now. I mean, even me, I always felt like my cousins got tons of lap time and loving from my grandfather, yet one time I criticized or did something to them, who knows what, and he stabbed me in the neck with a plastic fork, but fortunately it broke. He made me apologize to light fixtures for leaving them on. Nobody else had to. And it was my grandmother who carried me on trips and to baseball games, never him. My mom is very close with her oldest sister, and they know all of this, and that is a great relationship. Her other 2 half-siblings deny she was ever abused and would never accept their super religious mom would have an illegitimate child. Ironically, in some of her final dementia-ridden days, my grandmother would exclaim, "Why would mom's non-bio dad leave me?" And my aunts, uncles, cousins would be like, "What is she talking about? He's been dead 10 years. While me, my mom, my siblings, and my aunt, her oldest sister, knew exactly what she was talking about, but my mom never said a word. It's my mom's news to tell, and she chooses to say nothing, and that's her choice, which we all respect. She now has a very good relationship with the half-siblings she met through 23 and me, and sits on her porch most nights talking to them, and that's super good. Makes my heart happy. Story 9. Not as scandalous as some of the stories here, but was a big shock to us. My brother did 23andMe 3 years ago and randomly got a match to an aunt we had no idea existed. My brother asked who her parents were, but she was adopted in a very closed adoption. 23andMe narrowed down that she was a paternal aunt. My dad's dad was a POS wife beater who abandoned them when my dad was little. My grandma is dead. This surprise aunt was born the same year as my uncle, so we knew an affair must have occurred. My dad took a 23andMe test and verified she is his half-sister. But he also got in touch with another family member he lost touch with, a cousin on his dad's side. The cousin tells my dad that his father is dead, and when my dad tells the cousin he has a secret half-sister, the cousin says her uncle would never cheat on his wife, and he was an amazing guy. Yeah, right. He brutalized my grandma. My new aunt got a hold of her adoption paperwork, and her bio mom remained anonymous, but paperwork said she was very young and that the father of her child was a married man with a pregnant wife, an alcoholic, violent, and she was scared of him. So she chose to give my aunt up for adoption and never tell the father for her safety. My aunt is still looking for her bio mother. Story 10. My uncle had a secret child we never knew about. That child, my cousin, had a child. I connected with that child on a DNA site and got to know his mom, and she finally learned about her baby's paternal side of the family, as my cousin left the picture as his own dad, my uncle, abandoned, failed to acknowledge him. It's super sad, and I never told anyone in the family what I learned. Story 11. My paternal grandmother's family. The story my dad has been fed his whole life is that his parents divorced when he was young, and his dad took the 2 boys before family courts were really a thing. He knew he had a half-sister who would call the house occasionally, and he refused to talk to her. Turns out my grandmother more than likely was put into witness protection, and no one heard from her since 1970. I met several of my second cousins through Ancestry, though I still haven't found my dad's living half-sister, even though I'd love to connect. Aunt Diane, if you're out there, I'm ready to talk.